and my dear students and others who are listening. My point in this evolution is that, see, I think evolution is the fundamental of biology, even though people don't say it. And my point, one of my main point is that it is very sad that we are learning a lot of science without knowing much about the history of science. Although you don't need to know a lot about the history of science, it is very nice if you can, or if we can, at least understand the important points. So this evolution, I'll be taking in two classes, and in this I'll talk to you through history. All right. What is evolution really? Can anybody say? Can anybody just put it in the chat box?
Sir, when an organism is like needs to change to its surroundings, like if it wants to survive in its habitat, and it goes through a particular change, and the change doesn't take in a short period of time, but in a long period of time, and this change is actually called evolution.
All right. There is another answer to the chat box which said biological change to, what is that? Biological change to adapt to the surroundings. That is more accurate than what Ridish said, because you said that the organism wants to change or needs to change. No, the organism does not have any role in this. I mean, it is the surrounding which chooses it. So that is a better answer. So what I want to tell you is that the story of evolution starts in the 17th and 18th centuries. People think that Darwin came up. So what we said is that evolution is a dangerous idea by Darwin. Why dangerous? Why dangerous was that? It was because it is an idea that questioned some of the fundamental concepts of that time in Europe, especially. Not in India. We had other ideas, similar and not so similar. But in Europe at that point, it was accepted by everyone that the whole world was created around 4,000 or 6,000 years ago. And all animals and plants and all species, all beings were created at one point separately, and they remained unchanged till the present day, and they remain so now. All right. So there is a perception, or we think, that Darwin's theory of evolution was the first to say that species, or first to propose the idea that species actually changes. Well, not so. Of course, this brought it to its conclusion that species do change and how it changes. But the idea had some precursors. All right. There were three different varieties of subjects or disciplines from which this idea came in 17th century. And the first one was geology. Do any of you know what is geology? What is geology? Can you just put it in the chat box? Somebody. What is geology? Or you can speak up, no problem. Geology is the study of geology, Geology, geology. Geostationary satellite. So what is geo?
That Avinash has mentioned study of Earth.
Study of the Earth. Yeah, it's accurate enough actually. Study of the Earth. It is a study of Earth, rocks, formation of the Earth's crust, what is happening inside the Earth, volcanoes, earthquakes, now plate tectonics and similar things. So what happened in the 17th century? There were a lot of scientists. Scientists started appearing during this time, and they were called naturalists. And all these kind of the pursuits were actually known as natural theology. And they kind of looked at rocks, looked at rock formations, looked at mountains, and people like Lyell and James Hutton and Charles Lyell are noted geologists. So you see, this is how early geologists and all. You can see in this diagram here various layers of rocks, and a layer of rock like this oriented longitudinally here and vertically here and longitudinally here. So this is from Charles Lyell's drawings. So you can see a similar formation here. So he found that, and he found through a lot of observations that this was because that the earlier layers were put down as sediments over long periods of time, and then slowly they formed rocks, and then it fell down during some earthquake and similar shifting weather patterns, earthquakes and landslides and all that, and this has just laid down like this, and over that further layers have happened. So this is just to show that the geologists first theorized and they found out that the earth was actually much older than they thought. Okay, millions of years old. That was the first thing that happened. Next one was paleontology. Can anybody tell me what is paleontology? Can
That's
you
the
speak
study
up?
of ancient creatures like dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, study of ancient creatures. There's a better way.
Fossils.
Yeah, fossils. Study
Organic.
of fossils. Study of remnants of ancient creatures, both plants and animals. It can be anything. It can be a footprint. It can be a fossil egg. And what are fossils? Fossils are anything. It may be bones. It may be entire skeletons preserved in ice, or it can be amber. Amber is a kind of stone. Amber is a kind of stone. Yeah, so inside that, what happens is that amber is a tree sap inside which insects get trapped, and this tree sap hardens and forms a sort of stone. So this is also a fossil. And then see, sometimes what happens is that the body, instead of decaying, minerals seep into it, some of the bodies of plants or animals, and then it becomes hardens into stone-like substance or a stone-like thing, but it retains the shape and structure. You can, by studying it, you can know the structure and shape of the animal that was alive millions of years ago, or even billions. How many years since the earth was born or the earth formed? How many years have passed? Can anyone tell?
4.5 billion.
Yeah, 4.5 billion. And 1 billion is how many million? Millions?
Thousand.
How many millions? 1,000 millions. And 1 million means what? In lakhs?
10 lakhs.
Yeah, right. So what happened was that there was a group of people called paleontologists. This was at the time of Darwin and before his time also, around 50, 60 years before his time, they started digging up fossils of extinct creatures. So they found, case like this. This is something known as a trilobite. Trilobite is still there, but it's a very large trilobite which is not there today. And this is a fossil of a dinosaur. So people collected, paleontologists started collecting hundreds and thousands. Nowadays there are lakhs, lakhs, around 3 lakh individual named fossils all over the world. So what happened was that people started understanding that there were animals and plants in plenty, in thousands and tens of thousands, that are not currently observable on the earth anywhere now. So that time they had started going all over the world. So they knew that these were not there. So this was one clue that species or organisms were changing. Then the third discipline was classification or taxonomy. Who is the father of taxonomy? Can anyone tell without looking at Google or without searching in the net? What is taxonomy? What is taxonomy? Taxonomy. T-A-X-O-N-O-M-Y. Taxonomy. What is taxonomy? Study of classification of animals and plants, organisms. How do you classify humans? What is the scientific name of a human being? Man or woman? Human. Anybody can? That I'm definitely sure people will know. Someone will know.
Homo sapiens.
Yeah, simple. How do you classify Homo sapiens? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, like that. I'll tell you, like almost like Carl Linnaeus classified initially. Okay, now there are so many subfamilies and controversies in the classification of human beings. But as Linnaeus classified it, we are first Linnaeus classified all organisms into animals and plants. You can see the tree of life here. No? This is a tree of life, and you can see this tree of life is only for animals. The plant tree of life will branch off like this. So, as Linnaeus classified, human beings are animals, not plants. No, they're animals, and they are in the class in the phylum chordates. What is chordate? Vertebrates and chordates. Subphylum vertebrates. What is vertebrate? What's a vertebrate? What's a vertebrate?
Backbone, animals which having backbone.
Yeah, animals with backbones. Animals with backbones. Which are the animals with backbones? Fishes, mammals.
Mammals.
Reptiles. Yeah, we are mammals. Correct. So we are in the class Mammalia. And in which order do we come? I'll tell a few animals. Whom are we most related to? Whales, rats, monkeys. Who are we more related to?
Monkeys.
Yeah, we are more related
Monkeys.
to monkeys. Yeah, what is the order in which monkeys are there? Monkeys, apes, tarsier, and these small, some other smaller creatures are there. Loris, slender loris, tarsier, monkeys, apes, humans. We are in the order. In the order primates. Okay, primates. We are in the order primates. And family, which family are we in? There are various families, no? Cat family, like that. We are in which family? We are in the Hominidae family. We are in the family Hominidae. And we, who are the hominids? Part of the Hominidae family? Chimpanzees, orangutan, and gorillas and humans. All right. So this was how Carl Linnaeus classified. So he found that depending on behavior and morphology, he can actually classify all organisms according to, like a tree. It looks like a tree. He noticed that it looks like a tree. Okay. His student, a person called Buffon, not buffoon, but Buffon. Okay. The Buffon, that time, see, to think that species changed over time was a sort of heresy. Nobody wanted to believe that. To believe that was a kind of sin. But still, Buffon could not but wonder whether this tree actually implied common descent or common ancestry. So is it like actually there was an original organism, and it slowly branched out over time. into different species of types. He wondered. Okay. Later, lot of people took it up. See, because the paleontologists were already putting the groundwork, geologists were putting the groundwork. Okay, a lot of people believed it. It's not a lot of people did not believe. A lot of people did believe, including Darwin's grandfather, Erasmus Darwin. Erasmus Darwin was also a species changer, for want of a better word. And in 1800s, around 30-40 years before Darwin's time, a man called Lamarck even proposed a mechanism by which it can happen. He said that by use or by striving, organisms can change during their lifetime, and this change is transferred or transmitted across generations. For example, suppose in a savanna or in a grassland, there are only tall trees are left. So if a deer-like animal just stretched its neck to reach the high trees, so in its lifetime, there may be an increase in the length of the neck, and it will be subsequently carried over to the next generation. And then slowly, like a giraffe, that is how the giraffe's long neck originated. That was one of his theories. But what happened is that, you know what, acquired characteristics acquired over one's lifetime like this is not inherited. That people knew that time. For example, if my little finger goes in an accident, or I mean ring finger, I mean my index finger goes in an accident, or by misuse, or by some disease, it is not, my daughter or son is not going to be born without a finger. No, it doesn't as a rule happen at all. That people knew that time itself. So Lamarck was sort of, kind of chucked out of the window. So the main obstacle to the origin of species theory was how this was happening. How this was. Nobody had any idea how this could happen. So that was where Darwin really came in. So this is a new classification which we currently employ in the age of the DNA and all that. So everything is divided into bacteria, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Who is this? Any idea? This is Darwin. Okay, this is Darwin. Darwin was he was active. He was a young man during 1830s. So he initially wanted to be a clergyman, and he was studying for the church. So he did not believe at all that species was changing. And because it's a heresy, he did not think at all that the species was changing. But then initially he was a medical student, but he ran away from theater because there was no anesthesia during that time. And surgeries and all, seeing them was horrifying. So he ran away from there. Then went on to study for a priesthood, but he did not become a priest. He left there also, and his father became irritated. Then he asked him, in his 20s, early 20s, you go on a trip as a naturalist, because he had a lot of interest in these animals, and he collected a lot of them. So he was asked to go for a trip in a ship called HMS Beagle as a captain's assistant and as naturalist. So he went, and everywhere he went in the Beagle, he was sailing along the South American coast, and he collected fossils and observed animals and plants and made collections. Okay, and this was the turning point in his career. He started thinking, okay, along the Argentinian coast, he ate the meat of an armadillo. Armadillo, you have heard of it, armadillo. It's a curious, very characteristic shaped mammal. But he knew that nearby Argentina, there were fossils of another mammal which was extinct long ago. In fact, long ago, lakhs of years ago, nobody knows exactly that time, at least 10,000 years ago, they called it Glyptodon, which was not there. But then he realized that these kind of, armadillos were found in Argentina. But a similar thing, fossil is there of an animal which resembles it there only in that area. Okay. Giant sloths are there in some parts of South America. But in the same area, there are sloth-like animals now. Okay, same area, there are animals. For example, you will think that this glyptodon is very similar to armadillo. But no, glyptodon was a huge, big animal, like a kind of cow or a big deer, or bigger than that. So he knew that has specific, how does specific areas have got specific animals and plants, and they are changing their routine. So you find that similar fossils also there. All right. So this is one of the things. Then he went to Galapagos Islands and went to a lot of different islands, and he made a lot of observations there. For example, the Galapagos had a specific species of called Darwin turtles, huge giant tortoises, not turtles, tortoises. So this giant tortoise, people there told him that you can identify which island each tortoise is there by the pattern on its shell. So each island had a specific type of tortoise. For example, another example is the famous Galapagos finches of Darwin. So he collected them, a lot of dead birds, and brought it. So you see, each bit depends on which island that particular finch lives. If there are a lot of plants in that island, that will be a vegetarian finch, which has got a particular type of beak by which it can eat seeds. On the other hand, suppose it were eating insects, because insects were plentiful in one island, then you will have adequate adaptations for that, a sharper beak for that. Similarly, everywhere the finches found in that island is suited to eat the food of that island only, but they are very similar to each other. So he had a sudden realization that there was probably an ancestral finch, a small bird which flew in from the mainland, got trapped in each island, separate island, and they changed according to the conditions in that island. So that was a very big wake-up call. So then he wrote in his diary, he drew a first tree diagram and with a question mark. So that's a famous diagram. Sorry, I could not get it there. Now, the interesting thing is that Darwin came back. Then he went into a sort of hibernation. He started studying animals and plants, barnacles, pigeon breeding, and he published all his beagle voyage pictures and articles, and he became a famous naturalist. He waited for some 10, 20 years, 20, 25 years went on just like that, but not one word about species changing or origin of species, nothing. He just told it to a few trusted friends. That was crucial. That is good that he told a few trusted friends. He told a few trusted friends in the Royal College about his sudden inspiration and why he thinks what happened. All right. What happened was that he read an article by Malthus, which said that Malthus was a priest, he was a demographer. He said that population of any species, he was talking about humans. Humans are going down a bad path, he said, because population goes in a geometric progression. Like 2 people becomes 4, 4 people becomes 8, 8 people becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, 32 becomes 64, and very soon the population is going to explode. He was right. That's how population grows, isn't it? But he said that resources or food, we can never grow to match this kind of growth. So there are going to be famines, there are going to be wars, there are going to be problems. This is what Malthus said. But when Darwin read Malthus' essay, a light bulb went on in his brain. It's not like Kili Poi, but some Kili Vangu. There was another person called Alfred Varys, which was much junior to Darwin. Actually, 10 or 20 years is junior. He was a collector. I mean, collector in the sense he collected animals and plants and its skeletons, everything, went all around the world for zoos and museums. And he was also a naturalist. He also was thinking about species and its origins. And he even once talked to Darwin in UK once in a meeting about the origin of species. But Darwin did not tell what he thought about origin of species to him. But after that talk to Darwin, he went on a tour. He was always going on collection tours. He went on a tour to the Malay archipelago. Malay archipelago is Indonesia, Malaysia, that place between Asia and Australia, New Guinea. He had a peculiar interest in butterflies. Okay, then he noticed exactly what Darwin noticed for finches among butterflies in this Malay archipelago. He also noticed another thing. This is called Wallace line. There is a line in the Malay archipelago. So towards the Asian side, all the islands have got monkeys, other types of mammals, which are similar to the mammals which we see all over Asia. But on this side of the line, there are marsupials, like kangaroos, people with pouches, mammals with pouches. This is a fundamental difference because beyond this line, to this side of Australia, all the mammals are marsupials. Beyond this line towards Asia are all placental mammals like us. So he theorized that at some point in the past, these Australia were connected to these islands by a landmass, and these islands were connected to mainland Asia. But you find differences also between these type of animals. And then, while coming back from this Malay archipelago, he had a severe fever one night, maybe due to malaria, we don't know at that point of time. And he also read Malthus's essay. Okay, it's a curious thing, no? Both read Malthus's essay, and suddenly a bulb clicked in his head also. Then he wrote everything down and sent it off to Darwin. So suddenly Darwin found that Wallace had, Wallace had mailed that same idea which Darwin had for years to him, Darwin himself. So Darwin went to his friends, hey, what to do, man? This guy has got the that same idea that I have, and what to do. Now, will he take all the credit? But these friends said, hey, no. See, we know that you have they had this idea, and we will make sure. So they made them present a combined paper in the Royal College, that species, origin of species by natural selection. So it was very simple. The idea was that in a population, there was variation. All right, there is variation. For every population, every individual resembles its father and mother. Okay, you look at our fathers and mothers. We resemble them, but we are not exactly like them. You look at your brothers and sisters. We resemble them. All right, maybe more than other people. We resemble, but we are all unique. We have differences. So there is resemblance and differences. So each person is unique, but there is resemblance to the parents. So there are some characteristics which are passed on from offspring to offspring, but there is variation. See here, one population of mice. Some are gray, some are white, and they are living without any problem. Suddenly there is a change in the environment. There is a hawk which has come. Some hawks have come from the mainland. Say it is an island. And the hawks can very easily spot the white mice against the gray background of the gray rock. And they can easily catch them. So what happens is that over generations, the white mice are all eaten up by the birds. On the other hand, the gray mice leave more of gray offspring than white offspring. So that in course of time, a mixed population slowly becomes a population of gray mice alone. These are not the only changes which are going to happen. Here, the mice did not know anything about birds. But in this population, they may be running faster. They may have eyes on top of their head, more on top of their head. They may be capable of looking for, hawks which are coming to attack them. They may be more burrowing into the ground to escape them. So this is the simple premise of natural selection. So then in 1959, after their joint, this thing was published. So this is similar. See, this polar bear, this is a grizzly bear from Canada. In the north, it is close to the Arctic. It's very closely related to our polar bear. So much so that they can interbreed with each other, which is happening now when climate change is happening. Now when climate change is on, a lot of Antarctic ice is melting, not Arctic ice is melting. So what happens is that the snow and the ice is going from the Arctic. So these polar bears are not able to hunt there, and they are slowly encroaching into the territory of the grizzly bear, and they can meet and interbreed and produce white and brown offspring. That's happening now because they are so much related, but they were thought to be different species. But what has actually happened is that the grizzly bears, which were always there in the northern part of the earth, a small number of them had migrated to the permanently frozen Arctic ice, and they have become white because they have an advantage. White bears have an advantage in catching seals and other things because they are not easily seen in the ice. So this is what happened. So this is the idea. But radical changes can happen over generations or millions of years. This is how evolution happens. This is the radical or dangerous idea of Darwin and Wallace. This is the origin of species by means of natural selection by Charles Darwin. And it is a wonderful, huge work, So he took 25 years to write it. No wonder, because he foresaw every attack against it, every argument against it, and he has addressed each one separately. That is what made it so authoritative a book, and that is why he got the credit for it and not Wallace, because he has done the maximum work in it, and he could answer almost every criticism leveled against the principle of natural selection, and that the fact that species change. One of his idea, he starts with the idea that, you see, they look at the enormous variation in dogs, but the dogs are a single species. We started domesticating dogs at the most 25,000 years back. All right. But look at the change that has happened in a mere 25,000 years. Humans are the same for 2 lakh years now. We are almost the same in morphology. But see, look at the change that has come to our dogs, man. Some of our dogs are very funnily shaped. Some of them are built for speed. Some of them are built, dachshunds are built to burrow into small holes. Why? Because of artificial selection. By subconscious means, we were selecting dogs which were more friendly, which were more suited, more cuddly, more suited to hunt, more suited to run, and they slowly changed according to our subconscious selection, which is actually an artificial selection. But this is the same that happens in nature too. Instead of us, it is nature which selects, and nature does not do it knowingly like us, but changes in the nature automatically selects whatever is fittest. This is called the survival of the fittest, which is not a phrase coined by Darwin, but by somebody else later. So this is the premise of natural selection. And now briefly for Gregor Mendel, who was alive same time in Austria. So Grigor was a monk, another priest. You know, priests were the main scholars those days, and they had time to do all these studies. And it was found, I mean, they were encouraged to do it. They were the learned men of the period. So it happened. So he did a lot of study on pea plants. And you would have, I'm sure, I'm not going into the details. He made some studies which showed that suppose there is a yellow podded plant at the yellow pods, and you crossbreed them, pure breed yellow pod with a pure breed red. I can answer you in the questions if you have doubts about it. Then if you pollinate it, sometimes that what happens is that, not sometimes, it happens that 75, two among if you divide the whole thing into 4s, 3/4 of them will be yellow and 1 will be green. With that, he made a premise that the heredity is transferred by something which is in pairs and then comes together when male and female parents mate. This was actually the genes, which Darwin had no idea, because at that point of time there were no microscopes. I mean, microscopes were there, but there were no idea what transmitted heredity. But now we know what transmits the same thing. Now we know what transmits heredity. What does transmit heredity? Can anybody tell me what is this? What is this?
Chromosome.
Yeah, chromosome. What is inside the chromosome? Oh, in the picture it is very
Genes.
clear. What is inside the chromosome?
X chromosome. Genes.
Genes. Genes is the answer. Genes is the answer. But the gene is an abstract concept, right? What's a gene really? Can anybody tell me? In a 1 or 2 sentences, what's a gene? It's a difficult definition. I won't press you because there are various confusing definitions. What is there is that if you unravel a chromosome, this is the problem with sometimes with how we study. You see, we are introduced to chromosomes very early. But some of us, even me, when I was studying initially, I could not understand what the chromosome would be. Right? We learn a lot about mitosis and meiosis. Chromosomes go, and when cell division happens, the chromosome splits into 2 and goes into this thing. Then there is no concept, man. What the hell is this thing? Now, it's that time also when I studied, also it was very clear what it was. But people did not knew this diagram was not there in my mind at that point. Only later only I realized that the chromosome is nothing but a DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, our heredity. So DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid is how heredity is transmitted, how variation happens, and how similarities happen. So one pair of DNA comes from 50% of DNA comes from our father, and 50% of our DNA comes from our mother. And both express, means both create proteins. And this creation of proteins is the language of life. How we create this, how DNA creates proteins, the way in which we are made. And this is how we are unique, but we are also resembling our parents. We resemble our parents, but we are unique. Why? We resemble our parents because 50% is from one, 50% is from the mother, and 50% is from the father. So we resemble them, but we are unique. Why? Because there is a mixing of genes going on. That's the reason. There is a mixing of these genes going on in the father and mother when the gametes are produced, and then there is a mixed expression because both the father and mother genes collaborate to produce us. and they collaborate in such a fashion that it is not the same, but it's only similar. Okay, that is the key thing. I'm not going into the detail of it. And that is how the this is how the DNA is. And this is the modern synthesis of evolution as we understand it now. We have got variation, and we have small changes called mutations in the DNA molecule, which can happen due to various factors. So the mutation keeps happening, and it is a kind of a random thing which keeps happening, which is independent of our father and mother, our environment. So mutation is something which just throws variation into the mixture just like that. It is just like creating variations by random chance. Plus, there is variation which happens by mixing, sexual mixing, as well as the mixing during crossing over of meiosis, which is how gametes are made. I'm sorry if I am little complex here, but what happens is that there is genetic variation, which is formed by both Mendelian inheritance as well as mixing up of genes, which can cause in-between things too. And then nature selects, because when the environment changes, there is selection. And as the nature selects us, there is change in each generation. And over a course of millions of years, there is a lot of difference in a present and in the species. A lot of new species develop, a lot of old species die out. This is how evolution happens. So I am going to stop with that and questions. Thank you.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
So will the food chain be affected when there is evolution in the future?
Oh, definitely. Definitely food chains will be affected. There will be massive changes in the food chain. Massive changes in the food chain when evolution happens. Suppose evolution happens slowly, or suppose a new species develops, like that hawk, which is there, which was not there before. Then the entire food chain will be affected in that way. Something which there is going to be changes. Yeah, there are going to be continuous changes in how the food chain operates from time to time. Yeah, that's
Okay.
that. I think I will go in the next evolution part, which deals with what is the evidence in favor of evolution, more than what Darwin said. What is the evidence for evolution? So in that we will say there are natural experiments like this, when the white moths came into being, and then later it became gray, and now it has again become white. We are also evolving. Evolution happens in humans too, but we just don't notice it because it happens during years of evolution time, in hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and lakhs of years. There is evolution happening now, but it is in slow motion. Okay. People used to think that in 2 lakh years of time, or in 50,000 years, there were not much changes. That is true. We are morphologically almost same, but there are definitely changes. The last 10,000 years has been the time period during which the maximum changes happened. If you look at ancestral DNA, now we can take DNA from our fossil bones of our ancestors who are 40,000 years and ago and lived 50,000 years ago, etc. And we can see how the DNA has changed. And the maximum changes have happened in the last 10,000 years. Why? Last 10,000 years has been the period whereby humanity has undergone the maximum change. Agriculture happened, cities came to be, a lot of things.
Radhika has asked one question in the chat. She's asking, what change do you expect in human morphology in around 1,000 years?
That would be really be conjecture, no? I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see, I think. A lot of people are saying a lot of different things because it's a very complex, Selection is not only environment. every changes that we have is going to create changes in our morphology. And interbreeding is going to be there among everybody in the planet, which previously were not there last thousands of years. So that is going to change our changes. First, we will probably be becoming more homogeneous. See, now we see black people, white people, other racial differences like height. I think all of that is going to go very quickly. First, we will become much more homogeneous, because the geographic isolation, which is one way in which speciation occurs or changes happen or change in populations happen, is going. So we'll first become very homogeneous. After that, I don't know. After that, I don't know. I have no idea. A lot of interesting things people used to say, that our brains become bigger and bigger, but I'm not so sure, because actually our brains volume has shrunk over the last few tens of thousands of years, very slightly. We don't know the reason.
So, Jimmy, students don't have an question. The student in me has a question.
Yeah,
So,
no problem.
so I used to read somewhere that there was I don't know if it's a hypothesis or not, but there is a theory going on that in the last few years, not in thousands, maybe in a few decades, the human beings are becoming taller, especially in places like Japan, China, and all, where they used to be shorter, it seems. So is it only a fake news which from WhatsApp University, or is some merit in that? Any
No, no,
idea?
no, no. Oh, that is a very well-known thing. We are becoming taller every generation, especially Indians, because now we are becoming taller. Every generation is becoming taller. But that is something to do with nutrition. Something to do with nutrition. Now we are having the optimum nutrition. Whenever society, this nutrition improves drastically, the next generation is going to have. I mean, and it is plateauing in Scandinavian countries. It's plateauing. But in India, places like India, not, it is at a very accelerated pace. You know, I can talk a lot about that. Just I wanted to take some photos and put it, but you know, you can't, because of privacy issues, I refrained from doing it. But I have some friends. Suppose I have friends from North India who are in their 30s, who are residents. Okay, and I take a photo with them. All of them are taller than me, but I mean, most of them are taller than me. I take a photo with them. But I have the same people coming from North India, same region, who are working in as guest workers in our mess halls and in our campus. In the same age group, I put them and take a photo. All of them will be shorter than me. All of them. So it's a huge effect. It's nothing to do with evolution much.